Hi again then guys, and welcome to another nighttime movie review to set the mood for this particular flick, that's for sure. A movie which technically I've reviewed twice today, because I first reviewed it, spent like 15 minutes talking about the video, only to realise that the microphone was on mute the entire time. So that was a great start to a movie which, as soon as I tell some of you the director, if you're not already aware, well, certain people will be, well, that's enough for me, I'm out, I'm never going to watch the movie. Because, to get it out of the way, the director of this movie, 2007's Seed, is Uwe Boll. A German director, kind of a notorious one for making schlocky, straight-to-DVD kind of horror movies, and a lot of video game adaptations, mostly not that great. I have not seen a ton of his movies, to be completely honest. I've seen this one, of course. I've seen Alone in the Dark, I believe it's called, based, of course, on a game, which, incidentally, I haven't played. That one wasn't a great movie, though, and I could tell that even without playing the game. So, he has a certain reputation. However, as I get into this review, there are some things that I want to touch on which may surprise some of you. Because, of course, the fact that I'm reviewing this movie at all means that I believe that there is something about it that's worth watching. Because that, typically speaking, is why I review a movie. There's something about it, something in terms of the filmmaking, maybe the story, maybe the entertainment factor, that makes these movies worth talking about in the first place. So why am I talking about a Uwe Boll movie? Especially when many of my favourite films are not schlocky at all. They're very good movies. Stuff like Oldboy, Martyrs, The Thing, that kind of calibre of film. Sometimes very intense or borderline disturbing, but really good movies. So why on earth would I ever consider a Uwe Boll movie to be worth talking about? Well, let's get into it. First of all, of course, in a spoiler-free sense, although there are a very important couple of things that I do need to say even within the non-spoiler section, which are technically spoilers, but trust me, you need to know this thing in particular. And if you've seen the movie before, you probably already know what I'm going to say, and that is, of course, about the opening of the movie. Now, the story of this flick is very simple. Paper thin, you could say. It's a very, Jason or Michael Myers style, sack-over-the-head serial killer story. He says nothing through the entire flick, and he's the, big, semi-strong, silent type who just kills for the sake of it kind of slasher. That's all well and good. There's no reason to hate Uwe Boll so far, because tons of different movie makers have made that kind of premise. The story is actually slightly misdirecting, though, because if you read the write-ups about this movie, most of them will tell you that it's about a killer called Seed, Sam Seed, I believe his name is, who gets fried in the electric chair and survives. And because he survives, they have to release him. Because if you shock someone 3 times and they live, then by the law you have to let the person go. So he then gets revenge on the people who try to execute him. Again, that's not a bad premise. Is it B-movie level? Of course. But that could be why it's so good. The thing is, though, the movie actually doesn't play out that way. And that's not even a spoiler. It doesn't even happen until like halfway through. And again, that's not a spoiler. I think that's something that you need to know going in, because the way this story is actually structured is that that's the centerpiece of the film, and then after that comes what's after, and before is actually the lead-up, jumping back and forth through time. Again, not bad filmmaking. There's nothing schlocky about this so far. So why do people consider that to be the case here and with his other films? Well, here comes the spoiler, because the spoiler is not what I was talking about when it comes to the structure of the film. The slight spoiler is this. The first couple of minutes of this movie contain actual animal abuse footage. Not done by the actors or even by anyone involved in the film, actually footage provided by PETA. I have very specific thoughts on PETA, which don't really have a place in a movie review, but let's just say I'm not a fan. Unfortunately, Uwe Boll decided to donate some money to PETA. I get his intentions, I just think they could have been, better given to somebody else who does actual work helping animals instead of PETA. But regardless, the footage is from them. I believe some kind of expose that they did of some place or whatever. Is it necessary to the story? No. Does the animal cruelty need to be shown? Absolutely not. Do I or would I hold it against someone to never want to watch this movie based on that knowledge? Not in the slightest. If you decided based on what I just said that you never want to watch this movie, I would never hold that against you. What I will say, however, for those of you who, like myself, are fans of extreme, taboo, sometimes even banned cinema or disturbing cinema, what I will say is, first of all, I'm not a fan of that. I despise people who hurt animals, and as much as I love seeing people get hurt on film, I never enjoy seeing animals get hurt on film. So I despise that. I don't think he needed to include it. However, I believe there is a very specific point of justification, because the way this animal cruelty is shown is actually on a TV screen within the movie, and the serial killer, Seed, is watching the footage. So it's not that he is even harming the animals, it's that he is doing what, as far as I know, a lot of serial killers actually do, which is enjoy hurting animals, and I believe arson as well is something that a lot of budding serial killers start off with. At least that's what media will tell me anyway. So I get why it's in there. He's presenting that this is the kind of sicko who would watch this as entertainment. So on that level, I get what Uwe Boll was going for. He's not saying that you should be entertained by the animal being hurt. He's saying that this guy is. He's trying to set the stage that this is, a Hannibal Lecter kind of despicable villain. So I fully understand as a film fan and as a creator of content myself what he was aiming for. Do I think he stuck the landing? Well, personally, yes, but I can understand for a lot of audiences why that would be an absolute no, because most people don't even give it the chance to think, actually, why did he include this? Does he support animal cruelty? No, putting that in a movie doesn't mean you support it. Making a movie about rape and revenge doesn't mean you support rape. But it's a movie which many people will watch without any twinge of hypocrisy at all. So to apply that to animals is a little bit hypocritical. I get it, and I agree with it, but still, you have to at least appreciate why it was in the movie. This is not a movie about harming animals. So, with that to one side, what about the rest of the flick? Well, my thoughts on this movie are actually kind of mixed from a filmmaking point of view. It's not a movie which I will watch again, but it is a movie which I believe has certain redeeming scenes and things in particular when it comes to the filmmaking that mean that I actually would recommend watching this to one very specific type of viewer. And that is, if you are a viewer on my channel and you enjoy stuff like The Thing, The Blob, Splinter, Friday the 13th, Silence of the Lambs, this is not the movie for you. It's not the movie for you. If, on the other hand, you're a fan of Martyrs, Irreversible, a Serbian film, The Human Centipede, then this is the film for you. Because this is aiming for more of the shock factor. And this is much, much more mean-spirited than a lot of my favourite horror movies. Now, as I said, I do enjoy movies like Martyrs and Oldboy, and they are mean-spirited as well, but there's more than one way of approaching that kind of cinema. And I'm not going to ever say that this is up to their standard, or even any kind of award-level standard, but I will say that when it comes to being a nasty little movie, this does offer that. In fact, for me, I would essentially put this movie on a very similar pedestal to the Saw movies. And that is that it's very mean-spirited, it has a very distinct flavour, which you can immediately recognise. And it also, in a very similar way to Saw, actually has this combination of really well put together gore that's very well done. Not always the best shooting, but the effects, the makeup, the intention of the gore is all in the right place. It's got character, it's got heart, its heart's in the right place when it comes to that kind of gory cinema. However, just like the Saw franchise, everything in between the gore is melodramatic and borderline like an episode of CSI or Law and Order. People are way too emotional, way too dramatic, as I said, melodramatic, and it's even a little bit slow sometimes. So, with that being said, I would say that this is a movie that I would recommend watching once for those kind of horror fans. Enjoy those few moments of extreme violence, but you probably won't need to watch it again, because the rest of the movie is not that great. With that being said, however, I believe, on a slight tangent, but one which I believe is important to bring up, Uwe Boll gets too much slack as a director. I don't think he makes good movies, but there's a difference between disliking someone's movies and disliking the person. A lot of people seem to hate Uwe Boll because of his films. I think that is utterly hypocritical, because there are hundreds, if not thousands, of directors out there who are more and less successful than him, who make movies that are just as bad and often worse, who people consider cult classics, just because it's the cool thing to say. The Video Nasties, for instance. Those films are, with very few exception, trash. But people don't hate those directors. People revere those directors because they got into the exclusive club of being banned. That is utterly hypocritical. I'll tell you 2 reasons why I actually have a lot of respect for Uwe Boll. Am I a fan of his? No. Am I a fan of his movies? No. However, these 2 things I believe are important on a personal level. One is he is a restaurateur as well as a movie maker. He owns a number of restaurants, and here's the crucial thing. He uses the money he earns there to fund his own movies. He doesn't cry and whine to Hollywood to try and find producers to do it for him. He gets it done, and he's done it time and time again. Like his movies or not, he gets them made, and he gets some surprisingly good actors in there as well. Actors who you would see in Terminator movies, various well-acclaimed dramas, and even award-winning movies in his films. And of course, they're probably just there for the paycheck, but the fact remains, he gets good actors in his movies. The second thing is, he has made more attempts at video game adaptations than any other director that I've ever seen. And although every single one of them is badly reviewed, on a personal, professional level, as a creator critiquing a fellow creator, I would say good on him for trying to make the video game movie work, because he is putting far more of his own money, time, and effort into trying to make one of those movies work. Alone in the Dark didn't work for me. I don't know about other fans of the game. He's tried it so many times with so many different games, and regardless of the end product, I applaud him trying, at least. And he clearly isn't just doing it to make money, because video game movies are not the best way to make money. You could just stick to horror for that. So I believe that his execution is often flawed, but his intentions, I believe, are actually pretty impressive most of the time. I love the fact that he finances his own films more often than not, and I believe that when it comes to this movie specifically, there is more than enough for me to say, definitely check this movie out at least once if you are a fan of more mean-spirited, violent, hardcore cinema, if you will. It's no snuff movie, but I would say it actually has much better production values than a lot of those cult classics. Stuff like Driller Killer. I've watched those kind of movies. The Cannibal Holocaust type movies, all of the rip-offs afterward. I've watched those films. They are trash. I would watch Seed over a number of those movies any day, and I do not care if anyone disagrees with that, because that is the simple fact. If nobody knew that Uwe Boll directed this movie, it would have way more fans, because this is easily as intense when it comes to the violence as something like Hatchet, for instance. And yet Hatchet has loads of people who love it, and this one doesn't, purely because of the guy behind the camera. That is hypocrisy, because that is not judging the art, that is judging the artist, and I fundamentally disagree with that argument. However, I've said my piece in the non-spoiler, and this is a pretty long non-spoiler section, I know, but I think it does need to be said. So to get into some spoilers, there's not a huge amount that I do want to speak on when it comes to spoilers, but there is one thing in particular that I do want to bring up. One thing that I thought was very good, that would have been a spoiler, and just to touch on that one briefly, it's the scene where Seed has already escaped, and he's hitting the woman in the head with, I believe it's a hatchet, possibly a hammer of some kind. It's a very long, drawn-out scene, and although it ends up too cartoonish, sticking the handle into the top of her head ultimately, that goes too far and it gets stupid. But to begin with, the way that it's shot, static camera, long, drawn-out sequence, barely any music, a woman who is acting very well, actually, and just kind of hitting her harder and harder and harder, almost initially in a childish kind of way, like poking at a frog or burning an ant. That kind of violence, I think, was effective. Now, it goes too far, becomes comical, but to begin with, I believe that he had a good idea for that scene. So that scene, I think, was good. However, the other thing that I want to mention when it comes to spoilers is, as well as that initial animal cruelty, which I will never support, but I do understand why it was in there, the scenes later on with the decomposition, there's the rat, the dog, the baby, the woman. Of course, the baby and the woman aren't real, but for the first two, I believe there is some conjecture as to whether or not those animals were really killed for the movie. I haven't researched that, so I can't say, but I don't think they did, because the fact that the baby and the woman are also shown decomposing clearly show that whatever makeup and special effects team he had working on the film were more than capable of making a decomposition effect for the movie. They made a decomposing woman, they made a decomposing baby. So if they went to that trouble, why not do it for a rat and a dog as well? They're clearly skilled enough. So I don't think he did kill a cat or kill a rat and a dog. I don't recall if he killed a cat as well. I think there may have been, but I don't believe those were real. I do see how some people may consider those to be too mean-spirited, but again, you know, people don't hold that standard up to something like John Wick. There's a dog dying in that. Spoiler alert. But people don't have that kind of backlash. Why? Because Uwe Boll didn't direct it. Again, hypocrisy, as far as I'm concerned. Ultimately, though, that's my thoughts. I have no doubt there are tons of people who would disagree with me. Maybe some who will agree. Frankly, I don't really care. Those are my thoughts on the movie. Disagree, agree, tell me about it down below. The important thing is not whether or not you agree or disagree. The important thing is, as I've spelled out through this entire video, that you need reasons for why you agree or disagree. A formulated, fundamental, well thought out reason why you feel that way. Not what I've seen from most people on the internet, which is, oh, Uwe Boll, he's an idiot, hate his movies. Like, you seriously expect me to take your opinion seriously when that is the best you can come up with? I'm sorry, you're wasting my time. So if you don't like the guy, if you don't like his movies, tell me why down below. And also, tell me why you hold that standard, or conveniently don't hold that standard, to other filmmakers as well, because that is where it really gets juicy. But overall, that's it for my thoughts on this movie. As I said, I would recommend it for those who are more extreme fans. If you've watched this far in the video, hopefully you've already seen it, so tell me your thoughts on it. And of course, stick around on the channel for more extreme cinema reviews. I've already done some. I've reviewed Oldboy, Martyrs, Human Centipede, a couple of others. There are a couple which I still need to review. Irreversible, a Serbian film, a couple of others as well, and I will get around to those eventually. I might even do watch-alongs for some of them also. But overall, that's it for this pick. Of course, stick around on the channel for more, and until next time, I'll see you then. But for now, as always, thanks for watching.